We're joined by the military analyst David Isenberg, joining us from Washington, D.C. A suggestion there that this is getting into a second phase. Are we reaching a decisive phase in the battles in Libya now?
I think you're reaching the end of the beginning, which bespeaks the inevitability of a longer process. Personally, I believe that the talk or whatever decision they make regarding a no-fly zone, even if it's put into place, will be ineffectual. It will be too little, too late. That's not to say, however, that things can't be done by other nations to aid the rebels and in the end bring down Gaddafi, but it will require a long-term sustained commitment on their part. And
let me stop you there. You can come back to that point in a moment, but why do you think a no-fly zone wouldn't work now?
Because the effectiveness of the Gaddafi forces does not depend on air attacks. It's certainly useful to them. It helps terrorize the rebels and puts them in disarray. But the bulk of the fighting forces is coming from ground forces. It's coming from our armored forces, mechanized forces, use of multiple rocket systems, ground artillery, and a no-fly zone is not going to have any impact on that.
If he moves east, that is Colonel Gaddafi, and he has control of the eastern border and the area around the western border, if there is no fly zone, or even if there is one, how would it be possible to get weapons in or fuel in for the opposition so that they could continue in some manner or form?
The same way you do with respect to other countries in the region, which is you essentially smuggle them in. Bear in mind that there are countries ranging from right next door to Egypt, to European countries, the United States. They all have special operations forces who are trained in foreign internal defense and direct act missions, which means, in essence, training members of a local population how to get the weaponry they need, and they are skilled in ingress or smuggling in weapons to people that they want to aid.
If Gaddafi stays in power for some time yet, do you believe the American military machine and the administration are still determined on trying to see him unseated from power?
Well, I don't think the American political administration and the American military establishment are entirely on the same page. The military has acknowledged that it's got the capability to do whatever the administration, headed by President Obama, ultimately wishes done. They're good soldiers, they will follow orders, but they are in a tizzy about actually having to do something. They're still dealing with Iraq and Afghanistan. They're not at all anxious in getting involved in any kind of significant way with respect to Libya. Now, they would acknowledge being able to use their special operations capabilities for the direct action missions I talked about earlier, but they are very aghast about the prospect of sending in ground forces, however minor it may be initially, because they don't know where it's going to lead to. And they have the experience of Iraq and Afghanistan, and they know that when people talk about, say, surgical strike missions or limited incursions, that the reality is often quite different from what people say.
David, I mean, is it possible, I mean, I guess you've been talking to a lot of people very close to this, that there could be contacts already being made with those who are supposedly close to Gaddafi, but who might be willing to join the forces of the opposition and kick the colonel out from the inside?
Undoubtedly, there's all sorts of back channels which are being made, or at least being attempted to be made. One of the perverse impacts of the talk on the part of many Western countries in terms of overthrowing Gaddafi and getting him out of Libya is simply that it has the effect of making him fight harder, because unlike other dictators, there's not a lot of places for him to go. The Saudis don't want him because they are still angry at him from when they consider the past time when he actually tried to have members of the Saudi monarchy assassinated. Other traditional places, say Venezuela, are not particularly eager to have him there either. So there's really no place for him to go. So the more of a talk they get about getting rid of him, the harder he and his forces fight, because they figure, if we have no other option, then we might as well die fighting.
David Isenberg, thank you. Thank you very much indeed for that, out of Washington, D.C.